Recording in
We are
progress.
recording.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today is the April 7th meeting of the Finance Committee. And what I want to do very first is to welcome our new resident member, Kathleen Mitchell, who is joining us for the first time today. And she, as I understand, has been sworn in. So she is currently an official resident member. Joe Jane let me know that he's going to be late. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. And my first order of business is to make sure that everyone can hear and we can hear you. So I'll just call out the names as I see them on my screen. Lynn?
Present.
Kathy's here. Sam?
Present, and welcome, Kathleen.
Counselor Breivik?
Present.
Anna?
Present.
Kathleen?
Present.
Joe has joined us. Joe?
Yes, my other meeting got rescheduled, so I'm here. Thank you. Here.
Great.
Present.
And I don't think I missed anyone. So just Kathleen, we start with public comments in the Finance Committee. So what I can do, the agenda for today is simple, although it's we have a lot to talk about. It's the referral to us from the council for the projects that the Community Preservation Act Committee voted. And so we'll be going through that and taking a vote on them. And our vote will be whether or not we're recommending that the council adopt those measures. The other will be, Sean has worked out the meeting schedule for May in terms of the budget review, and we expect the town manager will be submitting the budget on May 4th, but we meet right away. We start meeting, and so he's lined up which departments will be coming on which dates, and we'll review that schedule and also a time change on the Thursdays. So those are the two big things we're getting through today. So I am going to open the meeting then to public comments before we, and I'm looking, we are now open for public comments, and let's see, are you the host? Did Athena make me a host or co-host?
I made you a co-host, so whatever you want to do, Kathy, if you want me to bring him in or if you want to bring him in, your choice.
I can do it.
Okay.
I've got, so Tony Cunningham, I have brought you in and allowed you to talk. If you unmute.
Tony, you're still muted. We can't hear you.
You're muted. So if you're talking, we're not hearing you. It looks like your mic is asked to unmute. I'm not sure what's going on.
Why don't I think she fixed it. Why don't you see if there's any other public comment, Kathy, and we can
Okay,
more time.
if there's anyone else in the audience who would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand. Maria Kopecki, we have brought you in and you should be able to talk.
Thanks, Kathy. Maria Kapicki, South Amherst. I want to remind the Finance Committee that it is your responsibility to act on behalf of Amherst residents to advise the town council to spend their money wisely, our money wisely, and with full confidence that those expenditures are unequivocally compliant with all regulations. We're relying on you to have done your homework and are not allowing yourselves to be pressured to give more money to a project that has already received huge sums of taxpayer dollars, both from the general fund and Amherst CPA funds. Concerns about the ineligibility of CPA funds for the Jones project have been raised for many, many months. I don't know if you've read them. I do know that at least one letter of mine to the CPAC was not shared with members prior to their decision-making. Whether that letter or the many letters since that demonstrate the inappropriateness of the Jones application have been shared with you, I really don't know. All I or any other member of the Amherst public can do at this point is to hope that they have. It's particularly disturbing that a recent addition to your packet includes a highly inaccurate representation of the Amherst Historic Commission's input on this issue. If you had watched the AHC meetings, you would know that not only did that body not recommend CPA funding for the items before you, but critical information they sought during their deliberations was never provided, and their strong reservations about the funding was never conveyed. Many of us also hope that you remember the pledges made by town and library leaders every time there has been a vote to approve more funding for this project. And that is for you to not spend any more town money on it. Well over 1,000 people signed a petition a couple years ago saying just that. As you well know, Amherst CPA funds are taxpayer dollars of Amherst residents. There is no lack of need for those CPA dollars for other projects, the majority of which cannot get off the ground without them. This project, on the other hand, has been fully authorized and funded and will be completed, including all the items included in the CPA application. Your decision regarding these funds will not stop those items from being completed. Please reject the use of CPA money for this project and allow that money to be directed elsewhere. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maria. And let me just, are there any other public comments? Okay. And I have brought you in. If you unmute, you should be able to talk.
Thank you. Thank you. I think most of you heard what I said last evening, so I don't need to repeat it, but I do want to reinforce the notion that, yes, these are tax dollars, but not all tax dollars are the same. The Community Preservation Act funds are subject to a number of restrictions which prevent them from being used for anything else other than historic preservation, recreation, open space, and affordable housing. So turning this grant down does not free up any money for anything else. It does, of course, allow the money to be used for other projects, but that's not other historic preservation projects, but not this year. And the clear procedure provided by the law for the awarding of CPA grants is that they are compared to one another in a given year. And so the only issue before you, it's a simple issue, is whether this is not about the larger library project. This is not a referendum on the larger library project. This is a question of whether the simple preservation of some woodwork, some beautiful, very important historical woodwork, competes with the other grant applications this year. And the CPA committee very, very thoroughly, at a great time and expense, and hundreds of pages of documentation, decided that it was. I think you should go at your responsibilities by acknowledging the work that's been done, their expertise, and considering that simple, very restricted question, and confirm the decision that they made. Thank you very much for thinking about this.
Thank you, Kent, for your comments. Are there any other public comments? I'm not. Okay. All right, we'll try to bring Tony in again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. Technical problems. Tony Cunningham, District 1. Maria said a lot of what I was thinking, but I just wanted to encourage you to split off the Jones project from the rest of the package of CPA in your recommendation to the council. I did send an email to the council, but I know the resident members won't have received that, so I'm not sure exactly how to get my thoughts to them other than speaking right now. But I would also encourage you to vote no on the library request. The woodworking is definitely worth keeping, but it's going to be kept regardless. And it's my understanding that the funding is already in the budget for that. And all this is doing is replacing resources and funding that the trustees had said, or the capital campaign said they were going to raise. So I encourage you all to vote against the Jones application. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. I'm looking to see whether there are any other comments, raised hands in the public. And seeing none, I will close public comments. Right, so we have two financial orders in front of us. And I think if Sean, are you able to pull the first one up, or Athena? The two orders, just so people understand what we're looking at. One of the orders, the one for War Memorial Pool, would incur debt, and CPA is allowed to do bonds to finance, so that is separated out from the cash projects. Everything else on this list is what you could consider a cash project. They have reserve funds that they can pay for it without incurring debt. We, in the Finance Committee, what I hope we'll do today is pull out any that we have questions on, not pull them out of this, but just first focus on any questions. I sent some questions in advance on specific projects. And so we are doing a review of what's in front of us to make sure we have it. There was, in the packet, CPA gave us a paragraph, sometimes a little bit more in paragraph, describing the project with more than just the dollar amount. So what I'd like to do, what I propose is first looking at this, and then if there's any project that we have questions on, get answers to them to the extent we can. Then decide whether we want to vote on it as a group with all of them, or whether we want to pull any project out and vote on it separately. We're making recommendations to the town council. We're not the decision makers. So if we pulled anything out, we would be still referring to this order, but we would be talking about moving something out. Is that process clear to everyone? Okay, so it would be first to just go through, Lynn.
Yes, I just want to restate that I have a conflict of interest filing on one of these projects. It's the one regarding the Mill River Historic Trail. My husband is part of the application. That has been the case in the past when they have received additional CPA money as well. He does not personally receive any compensation. In fact, his time has been given totally in free, and I see no conflict of interest, but I wanted to make sure that I disclosed that. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. And that's a good reminder. As Lynn knows, my husband, Larry Zacharias, is the treasurer of the District 1 Neighborhood Association, which is part of the application for this. He acts as treasurer, unpaid, voluntary, and he's actually not involved in the project at all. And I too have filed we have a relationship, and I actually talked to the state ethics lawyer who said this is not a conflict that would stop me from voting on the project. So there are two of us on it says industrial history. These are actually the old mills up in the north of Amherst. So are there any questions on any of the projects as we see them here?
I have a question.
Yeah, Joe, I don't know whether you can use the raise hand function. If you can, that would be great, but go ahead and ask your question. You can do it this way. I will see you if, I'm more likely to see you if you do it with the little yellow hand.
Okay, cool. Just a kind of a dumb question here. How much, I just want to be clear about this. How much is the Jones Library asking for from the CPA grant here? Is it the 477,000? Is that what they're asking for?
It actually, we have a memo from the applicant saying, acknowledging that some of the work had already been done. And so they've adjusted the amount to 330,000. So this order hasn't been adjusted yet.
Okay.
So does that answer your question? And it was, they took out some that will be done before this award is made, if it's made at all. And so that will, if you look at the way this is listed, there's an estimated ending balance way at the bottom. And that would then accrue to, right now, there was only 7,920. So that difference between, if this project stays there, that difference between 477 and 330 would go on that bottom line. And CPA basically reserves it, and it's available for spending next year.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Is that clear? Did I?
Yeah. So the total available balance to us is the 3.6 million in all of CPA, right?
Right, and so very often they don't spend out the full amount from the prior year.
Okay, yeah.
And they sometimes don't do it because they're looking toward knowing a big project is coming, and they could make, if they were incurring debt at that lower level, they could decide not to debt finance something. But basically, this order would just put it on the bottom line of
Okay.
the remaining balance to adjust that amount.
Okay. All right. So good. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm not, are there any other, I have one question, and I'm not sure whether anyone here can answer it. On the skate park, the original request, I went and looked at the original request was for 100,000, and then it was pared back to 40,000, and now it's 20. What I don't know is whether they can do anything with the 20,000. So it was just a question. It's the actual proposal is to do sort of a feasibility study on what could go where. And it was proposed to go near War Memorial Pool. So my other question, and I see Dave Domek has joined us. The other question, Dave, was, is there basically an acceptance that this would be a good location for skate park? Because my experience with the pickleball courts, the original request thought of them going up at Mill River in the recreation area. And there was a decision that that wouldn't be a good place for them. And then they were sort of out in the wilderness looking, not the wilderness, but in the town of Amherst, looking for another place to light. So it's two questions. Is $20,000 enough to at least get a start on this? And is the proposed site of the skate park acceptable to the town? Those were my two questions. And Dave, I think probably you're the only one who can answer those, at least the second one. And I don't know whether Anna and Jill are both coming in on the skate park or not. So I'm not.
I was just going to mention, Kathy, that the CPA chair is in the audience and did just raise her hand. So I'm not sure. I don't mean to put her on the spot, but she did raise her hand, so she might also have some insights there.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Katie, I'll bring you in. Katie, I should have allowed you to talk. Thank you for joining us. I think I allowed you to talk.
I think she's coming in as a panelist.
Okay.
Here we go.
Hi. I've been trying to wave my hand. I couldn't get, I wasn't sure if I was supposed to be in or not. So I was waiting to be called upon. Thank you for looping me in.
Thank you for seeing that, Anna. Somehow I didn't see that hand up. So those are my two questions, Katie. So the first part is 20,000 enough for them to get started? And then the second, I guess, is, does the town agree that this would be a good location for it?
Yeah, I think I can answer one of those questions, and thank you for sending them in advance yesterday. I have a couple of answers, and I know folks on town staff have other answers for you on your questions. But in terms of the skate park specifically, we had an original request from them, and after the presentation that they made, understanding that there was so many proposals and obviously not enough money for everyone, they gave us sort of two options. And option one for $20,000, which is what the CPA ended up voting on, was for a site selection study with limited due diligence for two different sites in the town. They working closely with recreation as well as other town staff to do so. The site selection study would include utilities, stormwater, natural resources mapping, regulations, permitting, and a diagrammatic conceptual design for each of those. And the other option they presented was at $40,000, it would be all of those things plus a full schematic design for both site candidates with 3D renderings. So those, when we got that information, I think the CPA's deliberations, we thought, wow, we're getting a lot to get started with two different sites and sort of the ability to have public discussion about it and knowing that they'd be working with town staff and with the recreation committee, felt like that would be a good way to get started with the 20,000.
Okay, thank you. And Dave, I guess the second question, when I looked at their proposal, they were focused on War Memorial. I didn't watch the hearing, so is that potentially an acceptable site to the town?
Yeah, if I could, just to build on what Katie said and something you said earlier, Kathy, and this is one of the things we're trying to do. I met with the advocates for the skate park. We had a great meeting with the recreation department and the folks who put forth the proposal. And yeah, what we're trying to avoid is actually what happened with the pickleball proposal some years ago, which was a site was selected with almost no staff input, virtually none. And so what we were trying to do is head that off at the pass a little bit, have the conversations. It so happened during the CPA process, and we had some really good, I think, resolution, which was let's come together and, as Katie said, study a couple of different sites. So the short answer is no, there is no determination that around War Memorial Pool is the right place for the skate park. We're going to look at a couple of different sites, and that might be a good place, but it is not the determined site, in large part because we don't have a site plan for around War Memorial Pool. Later in this meeting, you're probably going to talk about the bathhouse. Well, the bathhouse is the big fish in this little pond over there at War Memorial. Where do we put it? How do we fund it? That will determine where other things go based on utilities and drainage and runoff and all the rest of it. So the short answer is we're looking forward, if it is funded, we're looking forward to working with the skate park advocates. And we will do that if it is funded. I think the other question is, if this study is funded, what comes back in future years will be a much bigger ask, probably in the neighborhood of 750,000 to $1 million. And that'll be for future boards and committees to consider if we find a site and a design can be put forth. So we're looking forward to this first phase.
I jumped in with one I had questions on. I want to make sure we have time for everything. So if there's nothing further on this and people have other projects they want to raise, Lynn? Sam?
Yeah, I actually want to raise a question on this one, and that is that going forward, should we actually build a skate park, what is the liability to the town for injury that might occur at that skate park?
I mean,
That's a good question, Lynn. I think we'll need to study that as well as part of the siting study, because you're right. The town does have to insure all of its properties, so there's a little bit more risk with that.
Yes, thank you. And I'd like to make sure that if we go forward, that is included in this initial study before we move forward with an additional investment. Thank you.
Sam?
Thank you, Kathy. Did I hear you correctly earlier that questions on anything can be brought up? Or are you limited?
Yeah, no, questions. What I'd like to do is just pull out any projects that people had questions on. Let's wait to Jones till the last, but just make sure there's a long list of projects, and I didn't want to ignore the fact that if we're recommending that the council adopt it, that we've at least, if we have any questions on them. So that's the issue, Sam. So anything else? I mean, Jones we'll definitely talk about, but.
Yeah, so I had a question. I saw the deliberations of CPA and the presentations. I read all the letters and documents that came in, and we recently did have a request or a lowering of the amount for one of the projects, the Jones. I saw the Goodwin Memorial request or recommendation to put into reserves. So I'm wondering, and maybe this is a question for the chair of the CPA, does, or to whomever, I'm not sure if she's still here with us or not, if there's an increase in the cash available. In other words, there's going to be at least 140,000 cash available. Does the CPA committee plan on meeting again this cycle regarding projects that might not have been funded? I realize that's not the question before us as a
Okay.
finance
No,
committee
no,
in
it's
terms of,
this can be part of our report,
yeah.
Sam. Yeah.
So a question arises if there's additional cash. As I watch the deliberations, one of the projects that didn't get funded was pickleball. And I saw interest in pickleball from committee members, but the thought was this year wasn't the year to do it. But that was followed by a recommendation, a commentary that, well, this may be a done deal and it may not come back to CPA again. So I'm curious if they have any plans to meet again on projects that may not have received funding. In other words, I guess the question is,
Yeah.
what might they do with additional cash that or additional funding that has not been allocated or requested?
Katie, I think that's to you. Would you meet
Yeah.
again?
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. I think that was one of your questions as well. And we do not currently have another meeting scheduled. It's been the practice that we haven't had that happen in a long time, having money returned from a recommendation from our recommendations. So we certainly could. It is a long process, Sam, as you know, to bring everyone together, to have public comment, to do that work, and then bring it back as a recommendation to the town council. So I think we're under a little bit of time pressure. And one of the questions that Kathy had was, might we do that? And might we reduce the amount of debt requested for the War Memorial Pool? And I can't speak for the committee, obviously. I'm just one of the whole. So we would have to meet again. But I did, I noted, I wanted to note that you all have the ability to reduce amounts, and you could, instead of adding to something, you could reduce the debt without the CPA having to meet again. So I think that's up to the town council, not you, the finance committee, but the town council has the ability to do that. And so if you didn't do that and there was funding sort of left on, quote unquote, on the table, we, as a committee, we would have to decide if we had the time to come back and meet again and then bring our recommendations back, et cetera, before June 30th. I think we feel really good about the process that we went through and the details and the all of our deliberations. So we feel really good and strong about our recommendations as is.
Thank you. And just so people know, we could bring Amy in as well, but the other order that we're looking at is 1.5 million for the War Memorial Pool. So that was the interactive that Katie was saying, that if there was a substantial reduction in one of the ones in cash, potentially the debt that they had to go out with for that would be less. And I didn't know whether, finance can recommend things, right? So this isn't necessarily what's going to happen, but when CPA takes on debt, it decreases the amount available in future years, because it's spread out over time, the repaying of principal and interest. So there is usually an interest as much as possible of avoiding it, except when major projects come in. So that was just the interaction between those two. It's not that War Memorial is a subject to a yes or no on another project, potentially the debt. Anna.
I wanted to respond to Lynn's question about liability. I had looked into this, anticipating the question, and it's actually really interesting because, first off, there's far more claims from things like dog parks than there are from skate parks, and there's a higher risk of injury from pretty much every other field sport than there are for skate parks. So one of the things that the pieces from the American Planning Association and an insurance journal, who knew, talked about the idea of the assumption of risk. And so how folks are essentially, there's a lower liability because people are already assuming risk by engaging in the activity. And so long as there's, you know, a sign posted that says, hey, skateboarding can be dangerous, please wear a helmet, then we're kind of covering that assumption of risk element. The article, the Planning Association also said something really interesting, which is you're lowering your liability because you're giving people a place to skateboard that's designed for it. And so you're actually removing an activity, possibly removing an activity from areas that are more likely to cause injury, such as parking lots or benches or whatever it might be. So I thought it was really interesting. I was expecting to have to, I think the skate park project is great, and I was expecting to have to go to bat for it defending the risk, but then I found out that the risk is actually a lot lower, and that liability insurance, one of the articles quoted, you know, $1 million of liability insurance for $2,500 a year. So it's relative. I don't obviously know if that would apply to us, but the cost is very, very low, especially compared to other things that we might already have to purchase liability insurance for. I just thought that was an interesting, helpful piece for me in considering that project.
Thank you. Other projects, we've managed to zero in on the $20,000 project, but I think I had basically just one other one, and this was going and looking at the proposals, and this is yours, one that the town is bringing on the various ways of finding ourselves around the recreation and conservation area signs. I saw the mock-ups of some of the signs, and my question was, I had two questions. A few of them, I think these are needed. So I've no doubt that this is a worthwhile project. So I want to know how much the sign group already got, because I think they got CPA money in the past. Secondly, the design of a few of the signs look like it was a lot more expensive than needed to be. So will the design, they were major granite posts with beautiful sign in it. And then I worried a bit about the color schemes being able to be visible. So it was a question of, if this gets approved, does all of that happen with any public input on the cost of individual signs, the design of them, and the visibility of them? Because one of the issues on some of the signs we have now is you can't see them, and you can't see them when it's gray outside. They're both too small, and the writing isn't big enough, as opposed to great big signs that say Groff Park without a lot of other. So it's on this one line, just on if the council approves this, CPA approved it, what happens then? Who looks at the design? These are kiosks as well, and how total amount of money. So I think that I sent those questions in advance, and it may be, I know Dave Zomek with Conservation and others were I met Dave's team when they were walking around looking for places that needed signage. And so Dave, I think I sent them in advance because again, I'm totally in support of this, but I just wanted to understand more what happens after we've allocated this. And does this follow up on another 100,000, or how much did you get on earlier? Yeah, so this is the second 100,000. Yeah.
Yeah, let me see if I can quickly go through your questions, and just for the whole committee. So, yes, this is the second 100,000. It would be a total of 200,000 for all of these signs. We believe that will be enough. That was one of Kathy's questions. Will this be enough to purchase all of the signs? We believe it will be. And just to give a little context here, these are conservation and recreation, and we may even be able to get in a couple of cemetery signs as well. We're not sure about that, but if the budget allows, but it's mainly focused on conservation areas and recreation areas. We have approximately 70 conservation areas, if you will, all over town. We've got a dozen or more recreation areas. We have a hodgepodge of signs dating back to probably the 1960s, maybe even to the present. None of them make any sense with regard to branding, anything like that. Many of them are ancient and rotting or falling apart. So the idea here is to get a consistent messaging for residents, but most importantly for people visiting town, that they know these areas are open to the public, where they are, etc. It will be approximately, now it's both the welcome sign. I think the best example of a welcome sign for a recreation area is at Kendrick Park. Um, and that is one of the newer signs we have. All the other recreation areas are ancient wooden signs. So this will be between 125 and 150 signs. And I want to make the point, this is more than just a sign at the road. This is a welcome sign, wayfinding trail markers. When you're going on a trail, you may be familiar, if any of you use our conservation areas, you're familiar with Wentworth Farm or Mill River or Amethyst Brook. But if you go to those conservation areas, there's almost no signs on the trails. So, and there's no maps on the kiosks. So this includes all of the maps and all of the signs as you go down the trail. Take a left and that'll take you to Leverett or Shutesbury. It's 1.6 miles to Atkins Reservoir, whatever it might be. So it's more than just arrival signs. It's wayfinding trail markers. It includes money for kiosks, kiosk maps, and rules and regulations. Because that's the other thing, is we work with our police department, and our police department says, if you don't have your rules and regulations posted, they can't enforce the no fire rule that the Conservation Commission says, no open fires at Puffer's Pond or Wentworth Farm. Unless it's posted both in the field and on our website, the police department can't enforce it. So those are the kinds of signs, and it'll be, they'll be all over town. In terms of design, Kathy, most of these are not in the public way. So you asked, is there a role for the town council? I don't believe there will be, because most of them are not in the public way. We are going to and have gotten some preliminary input from the Recreation Commission, who is advisory on recreation areas, from the Conservation Commission, because they have care, custody, and control over our conservation areas. So the final design, which we are not there yet on, will go through those committees and boards, and we will announce that, and there will be an opportunity for public comment and public input through those two bodies.
Okay, that answers thank you, Dave. Sam, and again, it can be on this project, or if that's enough on that project, we can go to another. Sam?
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you, Dave. Katie, I'm wondering, I always had a particular warm place in my heart for the Goodwin Memorial. It was on my paper route area as a kid. I used to cut through the lawn. I think it's just a hidden spot in town that a lot of people might not be aware of. And I was saddened to learn through your process of the passing of the minister pastor at that location. The timing was unfortunate, aside from the uh, uh, sad news. I'm wondering if you have heard anything further from those applicants in terms of, are they planning to come back? I assume, but I'm post deliberations, what you might have heard from them. It's such a unique spot. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. I appreciate that. We have heard from them that they're, with some guidance from the Historic Commission, trying to get some emergency funding through the state program that has some funding still available before June 30th. So we're hopeful that they might be able to get sort of moving on this project that will help this. It is a total gem. I agree with you, historic gem for our town. And, with the challenges of repairs needed with weather and rain, et cetera, that we don't want it to further deteriorate. So we're hoping that they get that support from the state, and if not, we're hoping they'll come back with some adjusted language in their proposal so we can assist them with this.
Sean, your hand is up. Is your hand up on this as well?
Yeah, and we're also considering, there was a request to use some of the CPA admin funds to help the church with some design administrative type work to apply for a grant. And so we're working through that right now. I talked to Dave and Nate Malloy, who they've worked on CPA longer than I, and I think we're going to be able to do that. We're just verifying some things right now, but we have admin funds from prior years that are there to help the committee do its work. Goodwin submitted an application this year. There were some circumstances which delayed the committee's ability to really evaluate that project, as you noted, and so we feel like it could be an eligible use this year potentially. So we're hoping to get back to them this week.
And
That's
just so
great news. Thank you. Sorry, Kathy.
No, that's okay. It's just for everyone's reference, it's not on the list right now because it wasn't ready. And the committee said, should they come with a better form proposal, there were sort of reserve funds set aside, but it sounds like there's an attempt to help in the short term, in the immediate term, I guess.
Yes, in the more immediate term, yeah. The hope is that they'd get the funding from the state sooner than they might get funding from, after July 1st from the town through the CPA funds.
Other questions on any other projects? I guess I sent one other one in. I went through them all last night. Just the other one was Dave on trails. The way it's worded, the 100,000. This is the trail request is 100,000, and the trail request said an annual. And it's an example where bridges that are falling apart, construction. So my question really was, is this an annual request of CPA, or is this an ongoing every year 100,000? That was purely my request. I walked on some bridges where my foot goes through the bridge, so I can see that we need to do some work on some of them.
Yeah, I think the use of the word annual is kind of foreshadowing, and I made this clear to the CPA, or I think actually Aaron Jock made this presentation, that we just, like anything, these are capital investments. We just need to be allocating CPA funds every year for 140 miles of trails, dozens of bridges. These bridges, I will say that the days of putting 2 telephone poles across a brook are over. That will never happen again in Massachusetts. It was wonderful while it lasted, but the bridges we're doing now, are $30,000, $100,000, and they're going to last for decades. And part of the reason is they're engineered. They're no longer, it was wonderful again with volunteer help putting telephone poles across the Amethyst Brook, but the new bridges that we have to put in to meet code, many of them will be much more accessible than old style 1960s, 70s, 80s bridges. So I just put that in there to say every year we're going to come back with a request. There may not be funds every year, but just expect a request. And frankly, we should be doing the same things for our recreation areas. Every year we should be investing in those recreation areas, and I'll work with DPW and recreation staff on those proposals.
So any other questions? And I want to, I guess, I know Amy is in the room on War Memorial. That was the one other one. And the War Memorial doesn't show up on the cash list. It's the borrowing. And so my question is, does this complete the amount? So are we now at the point that there is enough money for the War Memorial bathhouse? That was kind of a simple question, because I know it builds on an earlier support. And Amy, if Amy's in the room still, that I think she, yeah.
Yeah, although I don't know if Dave wants to answer this one or if you want me to take it. Dave?
I mean,
You
either
can,
way, you know,
you can start out, Amy, if you want.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I mean, short answer is yes, like we will not be coming back to, yes, we will not be coming back to CPA again next year. So this with the funding that was allocated in the past is what should be able to get us a new bathhouse. The couple of variables or the little bit of hesitation here is just there's a range of options for some of the solutions. There's, you know, we are looking, you know, potentially at if there is an opportunity for a grant that might lessen the cost to the town. So there's kind of a couple of unknowns, but when we put this number in, the thought was we don't want this project to make it or break it based on our success getting a grant. We really wanted to put ourselves in a position where this could move forward and we could still kind of try for some other potential sources of funding. But if that doesn't happen, we didn't want that to make it so this project wasn't moving forward, or that we were here in another year continuing to advocate for funding. So
thank you. Sean, I see your hand went up, and Kathleen.
Yeah, and just building off what Amy said, Kathy, you may remember during JCPC,
That's what I was
um,
remembering, yeah.
there was also a request for War Memorial for a higher amount, and that it was sort of at that time when it was submitted, wasn't sure how this would play out. So I think, you know, Amy and Dave, you know, we talked about this. The hope is with the money that we have, that we'll be able to build what's needed. However, yeah, as Amy said, like if there's additional funding, then we might be able to do more. If we go back to that JCPC request, there was a little bit more than what was requested from CPA. It was about $500,000 more than what was requested. So, you know, in an ideal world, would there be more money for this? Yes, but as you know, and most everyone on this committee knows, there's lots of competing requests for resources, and so, you know, now's a time where we have to meet the need, and we might not be able to do much more than meet the need.
Thanks, Sean. That was the origin of my request, that I saw that potentially you were going to come into through another door for more capital. Kathleen?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, was the previous request for CPA money for War Memorial, was that borrowing or was that cash?
Let me double check. I believe it was cash, but I will verify right now.
Either way, I think the total is 2.75 million. So 1.25 from a previous, and then 1.5 if this is supported by the council.
Okay, so Sean, I think that we managed to get through all of my questions. So there's one project that I said, let's wait on that. So that would be the Jones project. And the related to the Jones, we have the option of voting on the financial order as presented to us, which has all the line items in it, or pulling a project out and voting on it separately. And then we would be recommending to the council, both describing why we did that, and we would vote on that, and then send the report to the council. So on Jones Library, are there questions about the Jones proposed, which is now 330 rather than 477 adjusted? Are there any questions on it? Yeah, Sean.
There's just responding to Kathleen's question earlier. They were cash orders for the first 1.25 million.
Thank you. I am taking good notes on this as for the report. Thank you for asking. So on Jones, are there need to know more about the project itself as proposed? And then the second is, do we want to separate it out to vote on it separately? So those are two questions. Jill.
I would definitely support separating it out to vote on it separately. I just had a question about some of the memos that were in the packet, particularly a couple that were added sort of late in the game. I'm just wondering if this is typical, and if it just seemed like we got a lot of information without a lot of context. Like, I'm not sure who some of those individuals are, why they weighed in, who asked them to weigh in. And Kathy, maybe, I don't know if you know that information, maybe going through each memo and explain, I think there are 4. But I don't know if others wondered the same thing. If
So,
we get more
I
context
see
on those.
Sean can probably provide context and then I'll build on to my knowledge. Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, so Councilor Brevik, let me know if I missed one of the memos, but I think I know the 4 you're talking about. So most of them were in response to the initial CPA presentation to the council. There were several questions that were raised at that meeting that we did not respond to that night. One of the questions was about the timing and whether some of the work had already been done. One of the questions was, and then the big question was about the Secretary of the Interior's historical standards and whether the project met the eligibility requirements. I think those were the 2 kind of key questions that we walked away with that additional information was gathered on. So the memo from Bob Parent, which is in your packet, that is specifically responding to the question of eligibility in terms of timing of the work. So he's the project manager or assists sort of our internal project manager for the Jones Library project. And so he worked with the contractor to understand the timing of when certain pieces of the CPA request would be done. And so that's the purpose of that memo, is to provide some confidence to this body and to the council as to whether the projects are eligible from a timing standpoint. The other 3 memos are really related to the standards, the historical preservation standards. One of those memos is from an outside group, so that wasn't generated from the town. I don't believe that was a sort of a public comment submission. Actually, 2 of them were public comment submissions. You have one memo that's sort of for the project and one memo that's sort of opposed to the project, but those are both from outside the town. There is a memo from a member of the planning department who works with the historical preservation committee. I met with that person because after that meeting with the council, I want to understand like what was the process, how do we typically evaluate these types of projects, because we get
Sorry,
a lot.
which one is that you're talking about now?
That's the one from Walker Powell. It's sort of a letter addressed to me because I'd asked her to kind of send a summary to me of our, of the process. And so that one is sort of our planning department's, or particularly Walker, who works with the Historic Preservation Committee, how we've handled historic preservation projects in the past, which is focusing on the sort of the scope of the project being requested. So 2 of those memos are from the town. 2 of those memos are really from outside the town, either in support or opposed to the project.
And Jill, when you say what is typical, it's hard to say what is completely typical, but in the past, if there has been, and I think one of the examples is when we were looking at the community fields project and the track, there was a lot of information on artificial turf. And so some of that was summarized in some memos. There was a little bit more when the town went out and got information on a couple other projects. We had a question on, what is the issue with if you give CPA money to a private homeowner, and in this case, it wasn't even a homeowner, it was a condo, a house that's multiple businesses. Should we do it or not? It was a historic. Should we do it or not? And is there any long-term requirement on the recipient of that? Do we attach a letter to that? So some of those, we were getting opinions. So I think what Sean has said in this one is there were more information sought from a variety of groups. So definitely not typical. But yes, asking for more information about projects has happened in the past.
It just might help in the future when there are multiple to give, like maybe a little context or a memo that goes along with each one.
Okay. So there were so Jill, so I actually will make a motion to move Jones out of the larger package so we can look at the order with all the others and vote on the two separately so that we don't, to the extent there's any concern about that project, it won't prevent people from voting on the package. And I'll put this to a vote on whether we want to do that or not, because that would be, that I'll make that motion. Anna? And first, we can have any other discussion we want on this.
I was going to say, I'm not opposed to that, but without having heard any questions or concerns about it, I don't know why we would preemptively break it out. I'd like to hear the concerns that folks have before we decide to break it out separately. If folks have concerns, if that makes sense.
Okay. So I can start with mine. I was on the council from the very beginning on this project, and I have always thought of CPAC funds as tax dollars. So at the very beginning, I thought we should have been counting the $1 million as part of tax support for this project. So that when we would say 15.7, I always said, actually it's 16.7 in terms of dollars. And so, yes, it's coming from an application to CPAC. It is a nonprofit. We don't own the building, which is one of the unusual things about this. It's a public library, but it's not actually publicly owned. And when we considered potentially rescinding it because it looked like the trustees didn't have enough money, and this was not quite a year ago, we were assured that they had sufficient funds. And in looking at, so right now the obligation is on the trustees and they have sufficient funds in their endowment. That's the collateral. So it's not an issue of this project either happens or doesn't happen with the funding for me. And when we considered it last April, there was no mention of coming back to the town in the CPA window. If there had been, I would have voted to rescind because I really wanted to shut the door on the use of town money. So yes, this cycle, I agree, you know, what we just heard is this money would go into reserve. It potentially would avoid the full debt of War Memorial, if that could be worked out, that we don't go out for as much debt. And then it's available for housing and community housing the following year. And there were some projects that weren't funded or that were reduced. So my view of it is a choice on how the funds are used. And having voted on this project several times, I was quite distressed when I saw it come back. If I had known about that, I would have voted differently last April. So it's a view of being around this project for quite some time. Sam.
Thank you, Kathy. I'm just, I guess, a point of order. Did you make a motion to?
Well, the question,
move
Anna
it?
said she wanted to hear more information before we, I
Okay.
think that was her request, before considering whether we move it into a separate category. So I was going to make a motion to pull it out for a separate vote, and we could do that. And
Okay.
then if that fails, we would be looking at the whole package. I didn't want to be in a position, I personally didn't want to be in a position of voting against the whole list of projects because I disagree with one of them. I didn't want to have that be a position that I put myself in. So that's why I would move it out. Anna, I don't know whether that answers your question. So I can make a motion to move it into a separate vote, and we can take a vote on that. And then if that fails, we can leave it in the list and vote on that. Anna.
Yeah, just to clarify, I'm not opposed to breaking out the motion. No one had stated concerns or questions about the project yet. And so I wanted to hear those because I don't want to put anybody in a position of feeling like they have to vote a certain way due to one project. I wanted to have the discussion before the motion. Having that motion didn't feel like it would impact the actual discussion of the library project. So I wanted to finish our discussion of all the projects before deciding how to vote a slate or separate items. That's all, just to clarify.
Okay, so let me just try to be clear in terms of, I don't want to, that we have before us a list of projects. If there are any questions on any other project, we should make sure we address those, including War Memorial. If there are no other questions, I'm making a motion to pull Jones out and vote on it separately. And I'll see whether there's a second to that motion.
I'll second it.
And are we ready to vote on that motion? Or do you want more discussion on it, Anna?
I wanted to hear folks' questions about Jones before deciding to pull it out. So if Kathy's the only one with questions or concerns, then we're good to vote. I wanted this feels like it informs the decision as to break it out. So I'm trying to understand why people want to break it out, therefore their concerns about the Jones, so that we can have that discussion first.
Okay. Lynn, and I can speak again, but I'm waiting to hear other hands too. Lynn.
I think we need to decide whether we're going to pull it out, because frankly, I think it's going to get pulled out once it goes to the council anyway. So, but either we're going to pull it out and then have a separate discussion, or we're going to have the whole discussion now and then decide to pull it out. I personally think we might as well just go ahead and pull it out, because once it goes to the council, it's going to get pulled out. So I support the motion to pull it out now.
It doesn't really matter, just procedurally, it doesn't make sense to me to decide to break something out before we've heard from everyone as to why they believe it should be broken out. I'm fine. I'll support the motion to break it out for the reason you said, Lynn. I think that's what's going to happen anyway. I just wanted to have the discussion on everything before deciding to pull it out. That's all. But I respect the chair's decision.
So Anna, what I'm going to recommend, since it seems like there are at least three, let's pull it out and have a full discussion, an absolutely full discussion, because I have other issues I want to raise, but I don't want to be the only vote, if that's okay with everyone. So I'll first get a vote on pulling it out. And I'm going to just go around the room as I see the faces. And Kathleen, as new member, all you can do is say support or non-support. See, we consider you a vote, but that's the level that you vote at. So Jill, yes or no to pulling it out?
Yes.
Kathy is a yes. Kathleen?
Support.
Joe?
Yes, or support.
Lynn?
Aye.
Sam?
Aye.
And Anna?
Aye.
Okay. So we're having a separate discussion on Jones, and we will have a separate vote on Jones. And so the floor is open for talking about the application for $330,000 for us. We're not seeing the specific list, but we've seen in the memos, CPA doesn't list exactly what it's for, but it's for various parts of the historic preservation of wood and woodwork in the library, and that is listed more than once in the memos. So are other people, I've already spoken once on the project, so I would like to hear everybody else's thoughts on it. Anybody? Sam?
Thank you, Kathy. So I seconded the motion just because it's clearly the project that has the greatest level of discussion. So I thought it was warranted based upon your request. I was going to bring up the reduction of the request from source 475 to 330 based on work that had already occurred. So it was, good to see the applicants make that reduction request because that was in my mind prior to receiving that. There's a lot of information on pro and con, and I definitely appreciate the vested interest from all our community members on both sides of this, what I would call controversial just by virtue of the fact that there's a lot of opinions on both sides. I've chaired, I'm familiar with the CPA process, having chaired it, and I appreciate the burden that the CPA committee faced this cycle of applications. My personal posture is one of respecting the decisions that the CPA committee makes, having been a part of it and recognizing that there are 9 potential members who get involved in the decision-making process, even though in this decision there were 8 and 1 who departed early. For me to, they're a group of community members who discuss things and deliberate on all kinds of different issues, and it's not a simple process. And when I was on the committee and later on as chair, it's not always that an individual's desires for funding are what comes out of the committee. It's really a process that they go through, which I respect. So to me, as I look at all the information that's come before us, the real question that would be one for me to weigh is not whether or not I think this is a project that I might have voted for or not within CPA, but rather any issues related to qualification. That's the singular issue that came to my mind as I read all the different applications, because I respect the CPA committee's process. And we've received a number of different communications. The official communication from the town council regarding the qualification of supplanting was pretty clear. Our town lawyer, who we pay, indicated that supplanting is not an issue in this. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an expert on this, but I have to take that comment at its word. The thing that I found interesting was that our town lawyer, KP Law, referenced at the tail end that you should get a preservation expert's opinion. Similarly, we received some comments from community members who had other individuals provide their recommendations, who also indicated at the end that maybe you should get an individual opinion on that. I don't know what the exact, there may be different people that would come up with different rulings, but what I looked at was KP Law said it's not supplanting. Historic Commission minutes that I read and I saw said that they were in favor of it. We did receive information today saying that that might not have been the case. That's a bit confusing to me in that there was, the Historical Commission, which was a representative on the CPA committee, it indicated that they supported the woodwork. We received an external communication, and we received a note from the town planner, who I don't think is a CPA expert, but weighing all these things is kind of hard for someone such as myself, and I assume most community members, to say which opinions matter the most. That's kind of where I'm at. My default is to respect the opinions and decisions of the CPA committee, who made their process with, I assume, most of this information in mind. So the only question on my mind would be, would there be something that would overrule, for me, that mindset? Is there something that would say, no, this definitely doesn't qualify? And,
Okay.
I don't have an answer to that question.
Jill?
Yeah, I agree completely with what I think, Sam, you're trying to say, which is that there was a lot of conflicting information that we received. I think that, I generally want to go with what a committee recommends as well. I think that is why we have the committee structures that we have. And I'll say, I think that I see the value in this project. It's very hard to support Well, so I'll say what I see, Sam, then what you say at the end is there something that like tie breaks it, right? If it's really hard to, if we're getting conflicting information, we're getting a lot of information in the pro column, a lot of information in the con column. And legal opinions, which are really just opinions written by lawyers, and then opinions where I'm not actually sure who's writing it and what their background is and what their qualifications are, and would require so much more time and effort and energy to really sort through a lot of the information we're getting. For me, it's less about trusting the committee. The committee did their job, and I think that they did a good job. But I think the council has a different obligation and commitment to the taxpayers. And I was not on the council when the initial project went through, but the council did make a commitment to give the money that they gave and not a penny more. And I think that we've given enough money of taxpayer dollars to this project. And going back on that promise so quickly at the next possible opportunity, I think as a resident would be really surprising and concerning to me, and I think would contribute to eroding trust in leadership. And I think it would be problematic. I understand some of the feedback we've gotten that's, okay, well, we can't use this money for schools or operating, but Kathy's right, we can use it for affordable housing in a time of, a housing crisis. So yeah, to cut myself off and not ramble, I think for me, in the face of a lot of conflicting information and a really difficult, the way that this kind of went down was really challenging. I think for me, what grounds me in my decision making is that commitment that we've made to giving the money that we gave to this project, and standing by that and standing firm in that decision.
Sam, I'm going to call on Kathleen, Anna, and Joe because they haven't spoken yet. Kathleen?
Yeah, I will echo what Sam and Jill have said about receiving a lot of conflicting information and having a hard time being able to parse all of that out. To me, one of the things that really sticks out among all of that information, and I went back and listened to the CPA meetings again, where this was discussed, is that when the question came up about the project coming back to CPA after the council has made, seeming to have made a commitment to no more town funds going to this project, I recall the chair of CPA indicating that that was not part of the guidance that CPA was working on, it was not the CPA committee's responsibility to take into account that kind, whether the town has said no more tax money or no more town money. So to me, that's an issue that may be relevant to the town council's decision on this, that was not relevant to the CPA's committee decision on this. And that's primarily why I support pulling it out of the whole list, and letting the council consider that this one request separately, because I think there's a different consideration at play. Otherwise, I completely agree with Sam that the CPA committee should operate independently. They are the folks tasked with this work, and I would prefer not to see council sort of overruling their, quite considerate deliberative process. That to me, that this is one issue that they very clearly stated they did not consider, and that the town council may want to consider. So that's where I am on it at the moment.
Thank you. Anna?
Thank you. Something is sticking for me, and I think that there's a misinterpretation or misremembering about that "not a penny more" statement. That was said by one individual, by Lynn, when she was council president. There was never a vote by the town council, and Lynn was speaking on her own, not to speak for you, Lynn, but my having sat in that meeting, you were speaking on behalf of yourself. That was not something that the council actually ever decided. And so, you know, whether or not we as individual councilors believe that is a separate issue. But I think that, you know, Kathleen, to your point, CPA didn't consider that as guidance because it wasn't ever a decided thing, right? This was never a decided statement from the council. And so I think I'm concerned with the misinterpretation that one individual's comment is taken as a council decision. Even if multiple individual councilors said that personally was their belief, that was never a vote of the council. So I would encourage us to kind of reframe that particular statement and how much we're letting it guide our view of this project, because it was not guidance. And for me, I think I see our role here as an extra layer of scrutiny, but I do also trust the CPA committee to understand what they plan to spend their funds on. So for me, I do support this right now. I do share the concerns about the conflicting information that we've got. And I think something the committee should discuss is how we are requesting that information, and kind of how we're told when we get it back is really important so that we are adequately prepared, and understand, like Councilor Breivik said, where things came from and how we're supposed to be applying them, or how we can best apply them to our decision making. But yeah, my comment is really just the council never took a vote on Not a Penny More. That was never a council decision. It was one individual.
Can I ask just a point of clarification on that?
Sure.
Because Kathy referenced a meeting, I think it was the last meeting on this, where I believe it had to do with the final approval of the borrowing on this, where there was an affirmation or a confirmation that there wouldn't be another request. Kathy, can you just clarify that what the meeting that you just referenced in your comment
Well,
earlier?
and we had a vote on whether or not to rescind, and we were assured that the trustees would be able to close the gap from fundraising. And in the sources they listed on where they were going, that there was no mention of coming back to CPA, no mention of it. And when I asked the town manager, when the first request to CPA surfaced, whether he knew this was in the works, he said no. It caught him by surprise. So they are, you know, so I think everyone understands this work is going to happen one way or the other. And they have an endowment at stake that has the funds to pay for the remaining amount that they assured us, and they have pledges outstanding. So at that one, Jill, Anna is absolutely right. We have never taken a vote on what we interpret as tax dollars. You know, what I said is I always thought CPA, and the very first vote, way back when it was only 36 million, I tried to count the million of CPA as tax dollars and not included as fundraising. So that was, and I was overruled. You know, I mean, that was not voted, that if we said 15.8, general tax revenues would only be 14.8, you know, that the two together would add to it. Lynn, the way we voted on it, CPA was separate, you know, so it was, and there wasn't any effort to come back to that and say, do we owe 14.8? And that was, again, when it was at 36 million, when the gap was about 5 million. So that's the history. Anna is right. We never voted that from any source of taxes, but I think of a surcharge on our property taxes. So,
but just to clarify, Kathy, while you believe that, the town's portion has never contained CPA. CPA dollars have always gone towards the library's portion in terms of what line they fall under.
You know, that's absolutely right. And when the trustees were asked on a renovation project, wouldn't you apply for CPA? And they said they might or might not, even though it would be historic. You know, so in other words, there was CPA was always potentially on the table for restoration. It just, you clearly don't apply for CPA for just renovating. If you're applying for doing it, you only apply once. So it was always seen the same way the schools we've gone to it for track and field, that CPA has usually been when the project wouldn't happen without CPA money. That's typically been when we've looked to CPA as a town. And as everyone I think knows, this is funded at this point. So the question of supplanting the CPA committee asked about it and was told there would be a legal opinion, but they didn't have one at that point. The legal opinion was after they voted. And I don't believe you went back to the parent CPA. There's a coalition, there's a group that often weighs in. It was sent to the town lawyers. So Anna, you are right. We never definitively said we all consider CPA as tax dollars. That is true. So I see, again, Joe's hand is up, and Lynn, and then I'll come back to Sam and Jill. Joe?
Yeah, mine's just really quick. I'm just, looking at this from just the dollar amount. It seems a very small percentage of the library's budget, from, we're going for $300 plus $1,000. And I just kind of think that, yes, this is going to happen regardless. I believe in the library. I think it's a great project. It's awesome. And they're going forward. But, I feel that those dollars, we should consider those dollars and the leverage that we get as a town and some of our other projects. These are smaller projects that we're looking at on the sheet, right? But we have more leverage with those dollars. They're going to be covering a larger percentage of expenses going towards any other project we look at. So I'm just kind of looking at that, like how much is the library really getting out of this? Out of a massive budget, we're going to throw in an extra 300,000 for them. Yeah, they could tap their endowment. They, maybe it's, maybe they bond it out a little bit, but it's a very small percentage in the size of that project. But I feel like there's so much things that there's other things that we could be focusing on here in town where those dollars will go kind of a longer way in terms of implementing and supporting some of these projects that don't have such huge budgets, right, from a percentage basis. But those are just kind of my thoughts about it. But
thank you.
Thanks.
Lynn. And you've got to unmute.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go back to a few things that have been said and then a few other things. First of all, I do think we owe a lot to a committee that spends as much time on making decisions as the CPA committee does. And both our former chair is sitting now on the council and on the finance committee, and the present chair has been with us for this meeting and previous meetings. Another thing I'd like to point out, as much as there is conflicting legal advice, the legal advice that we received from KP Law, one needs to understand the extent to which KP Law represents many, many, many municipalities across the Commonwealth, more than any other law firm representing municipal government. And so they know their business. And when they say something to me, I tend to really believe it. It doesn't mean I haven't challenged them. It doesn't mean I haven't pushed them. But I would take what KP Law says over any other legal opinion I've seen. The third thing is, yes, I own the statement, not a penny more. But here's where I differ. I don't think of CPA as being the same color of money. I never have. I never agreed that the $1 million that they already got was a part of these taxpayers' money. The state does provide a minimal match. It doesn't provide a lot, unfortunately. It was supposed to provide a lot. But Anna, you are absolutely correct. We never voted on the not a penny more. So that is not a council policy. I do want to point out, people keep saying, oh, this is in the budget. It'll happen anyway. Yes, it's in the budget, but whether the budget is fully funded is the question. And that's the question people keep coming back to. So I want to absolutely review a little bit of history here, okay? We inherited this project as a council But believe it or not, this project's been going on for at least 10, if not more years. The project survived COVID, which led to additional bump in cost. It has continued to survive enormous opposition and controversy in this town, mostly because it happened to come before other projects, not because people are opposed necessarily, but they decided this is where they would put their stake. And that opposition has gone so far as to cost this project an additional close to $10 million more. In addition to that, people who in opposition have gone so far as to write the federal government, leading to the withdrawal of over $1 million grant that Representative McGovern helped us get. In addition to that, Mindy Dom and Joe Comerford, every time we've had to go for an extension, which was 3, have made sure that we got that extension. And in addition to that, when it was important for us to get a 6th year of money, they also went to bat for us and got that money. So this is a commitment that's been out there. It's a commitment that has an ongoing controversy about it. The doors will open on this project at some point, and I hope that we all can find in our hearts to feel that this is a good addition to our downtown and see it not just as a place where books happen to be stored, but as a community center. Because what it is a lot more than the traditional library that we think of. So I find this an unfortunate situation that every year, for some reason or another, this has to publicly be redebated as to whether or not we feel we should have a state-of-the-art 21st, 22nd century library in Amherst. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Sam and then Jill.
Thank you, Kathy. There's been a lot of comments and discussion through the years that we've all seen and paid attention to. I think the community members who advocate in favor and community members who advocate against this library are genuine in their motivations, and I don't think they should be delegitimized as why they're doing things, nor blamed necessarily for any particular expense. I think folks have been what's the word? Honest brokers in their own opinions and discussions. So I'm a fan of non-personal type discussions on the subject. It's certainly, from my perspective, legitimate for those who are against the library, perhaps for a variety of reasons, to bring up the issue of what we've paid so far as a town, and to discuss that these are tax-funded dollars. They do arrive, CPA does get funded through the town, but there's also matching funds from CPA. It's also true that CPA dollars are limited in what they can be used for. They cannot be used to fix our roads, nor can they be used to pay teacher salaries or DPW salaries. Could they have been used for the roof on the middle school? Open for debate. Not enough time to make that happen. But it's a specific category, so I understand Lynn's comment in terms of how we look at it. That's part of the reasoning from my perspective of listening to the group decision from a CPA committee, in that they are chartered with making decisions against competing requests and potential future requests. So, I can understand how someone who has sat in previous meetings saying, hey, they said they weren't going to give us any, they weren't going to come back anymore, saying, I don't want to vote for it because of that. It's perfectly reasonable mindset. I have my own mindset in terms of, following CPA guidance, unless there's something definitive to the contrary that says it's not something we can do. It is true that it's a large budget. And the impact would be perhaps greater in other locations, the use of the money. It's also true that I haven't followed every step of the way, but my guess is that the project probably would have been a lot easier without retaining certain aspects of the woodwork. I think it would be a travesty were they not retained, but it does impact the expense. Having said all that, it's great that we have community members who are motivated. It's a shame that it's a controversial issue. I understand why it is. Um, but for me personally, I would need a definitive, unequivocal uh, opinion from someone that the town vests their uh, decision in to go against the recommendations of a CPA committee. That's just me from my own experience on the committee. It's a challenging position, and so that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Jill?
I just wanted to quickly comment on the KP Law memo and that piece of this, just because I did want to share that I think, I mean, while they are a law firm used by many municipalities across the state, we recently had a decision by them on an unrelated matter that they then reversed course on. So like they had one set of information or one perspective on an issue, and they issued a memo on it, and then got more information and broader perspective, and then changed their opinion. And often this has a lot to do with how an issue is framed to them, what information they're given. I mean, they're not doing full-scale, elaborate investigations into these things where they're doing their own independent research on a topic. They're taking the information that we're giving them, and they're issuing an opinion on it. And I just think that the memo that they provided to us, I mean, really, if you look at the meat of it that relates to the supplanting piece, and they're saying that the DOR's language indicates that CPA funds may not be used to replace existing operating funds, and then their opinion on why this is an exception to that is vague. It's not, to me, it doesn't, I think it is an attempt to make a case on one side of this. But again, there is also another side. And so I just don't know if, as a finance committee and as counselors, that we should be taking this as fact. I think that I don't know if there is a way to consult with the DOR directly, or if there could have been some other homework done prior to making this request, or just more put into it to avoid this level of upheaval. I mean, it's hard to see kind of like what this has done and how many emails we've gotten and how many people have written these memos and how much time from our staff and others have gone into this one. Like I feel like there should have been a way to get a really clear answer from the DOR on whether this was a yes or no situation. But I definitely don't think that it's healthy for us to take KP Law, on its own as the be all end all in decision making around things like this.
So I'm not seeing any other hands. I could correct your timeline a little bit, Lynn, that the big jump in costs was COVID. And as you remember when we got hit by that, we asked the Library Commission not to award the grant, to wait, because we weren't going to be able, we the town did not have the money to do this. And it was when it was at the smaller level. And then there was a second delay when the bids came out too high, and we had to go back and redesign to try to get it back down. And then there was another delay that the library trustees did not start the 106 process really early. And so we even had some retrofits of the project at the end to make sure we could get the HUD grant. So some of these were not opposition. Some of these were just along the way, a complicated project. And what happened to construction costs. We were really lucky with the elementary school that we weren't trying to build 2 years earlier than we were. I mean, things had steadied out a little bit, so everyone was in shock. So I guess we're at a point. We have we've pulled this project out, and we can take a vote on whether we're recommending the project or not for funding. And then we can vote on the appropriation and transfer order with the wording that we've pulled this one project out, so we have a separate vote. And then we have also to vote on our opinion of the debt order for the debt financing order for War Memorial Pool. So if, Anna, I'm seeing your hand is up, so I just am looking for what the time, and Lynn said we should spend a lot of time talking on it, so I'm not trying to cut off the time, but it's 2:30. So a question of what we want to do right now. Anna.
Well, I think this sort of ties into it. I think Councilor Breivik brought up some really interesting ways of moving forward in terms of getting clarity around the KP Law opinion. And I'm wondering if it would make sense to I guess we've got a couple of options here, right? But to ask KP Law kind of for their sources and to understand where they got the information that they're telling us. Just to kind of, I think I disagree a little bit with Councilor Breivik's statement about KP Law kind of just pulling from the information we gave them. I do believe that they go out and do a significant amount of research, including case law, but I'd like to hear from them about what that is. I could be wrong. Maybe they're just pulling from the information we gave, but I think it would be helpful. It sounds like it would be helpful for councilors to understand what KP Law is putting into these decisions and whether they have talked to the folks at CPA at the state level or DOR or whoever, just to understand a little bit more prior to making a full recommendation.
And so, Anna, let me try to repeat back to you what I heard. So a vote on Jones could be, we need additional information on this. And we're requesting, and I think Jill was saying, do you go directly to DOR on this? The other organization that weighs in on this there is a Community Preservation Act group. And the issue right now is it's fully funded in terms of the town has short-term bank notes to cover the part that's going to be owed back by the library. So the issue on supplanting is when does one consider what is supplanting, and so DOR could weigh in on it, the CPA coalition. So we could ask for more information on that.
Yeah, I guess I would suggest starting with KP Law since the opinion came from them in the first place that it was not supplanting. I would personally, that's where I would start.
So what sources were used to make that decision? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to other thoughts on it. That's just kind of where I think the first step makes sense to go.
Okay. And that would be, this goes, Lynn, I see your hands, but I'm just trying to think of what we actually would be voting to do right now, because the council, we've had the public hearing on this. The council can take up the financial order for everything else but Jones while waiting for this. I mean, we won't delay the other project approvals, or that we can still be voting on that. And we did that once with a housing project. We pulled it out and waiting for more information. So I think that's one way of handling it. Lynn.
if we're going to get additional opinion, I think it's important to go back to the state agencies too. Very honestly, they're the ones that if it isn't correct, that they would have to come back to us. So we might as well get the opinion from them. And if I'm not mistaken, we have another meeting before the next council meeting.
We,
of finance.
we meet on the 21st. When is,
Oh.
I'm just gonna pull up.
The next council meeting is not to the last Monday of April.
Yeah, so we do meet again, so we can,
Right.
we won't be, yeah, so I can draft a report, so I'm just not this, when you say the state agency, Lynn, it's the one
It's
that.
DOR and it's the CPA. I mean, I
CPA.
think,
Yeah,
if
it's
people
DO
want to question
No, I
maybe
agree
law.
with that. And this, so I think that is the appropriate, go all the way up on here's the funding, describe, here is the funding situation and here's the applicant. And the question is it's a question, is it eligible, right?
I'm
It's
good
a-
with that.
That is the question. And again, we can go back to KP law, but I think, and I think that's appropriate as well, but I do think it's really the state agency that decides whether or not it was money spent. I see Sean's
Yeah,
hand up
Sean,
and may have some opinion on that.
Sean?
Yeah, we will try to reach out. I will caution, my understanding is that the DOR does not actually get into the eligibility of CPA projects, but I will confirm that. So we will reach out to them, but I wouldn't assume that we're going to get like a yes or no definitively. We might, but we can reach out to them.
And so we could vote on everything but this. We could get a report to that, and we could say on the 21st, we're going to be meeting again on Jones with this information in front of us. Is that what you were thinking, Lynn, in terms of the vote on it? I mean, so everyone knows that the money, this is July 1st money. This isn't April money. In terms of
that's my suggestion. We also had another referral yesterday that we can take up on the 21st.
So we can take this up on, so we could take the entire thing up on the 20, the other thing would be take the entire thing up, get the draft report minus the section on Jones, have Jones be in it. And then look at that report and figure out what we're going to say about Jones. Does that work for everyone? Sam?
Thank you, Kathy. Lynn's thought process of going to the source, the root source, seems to make sense to me. That for me all along, it was what's the CPA committee say? And does it qualify? There's a supplanting question, and then there was the issue of standards and whatnot. To me, the woodwork is clearly historic, and if there's the ability for a state agency to render an opinion on it, whether it qualifies or not, it seems as though it would be helpful to everyone. But without that, we have one opinion from the town on one of the issues, and we have internal deliberations from town committees, be they the Historic Commission and the CPA. If there's something definitive that comes through, distinct from what we've already received, it would be something the council could consider.
Jill?
Yeah, I think we have conflicting legal opinions from two highly respected law firms. I don't necessarily support spending more town funds on going back to private attorneys on any of this. I think I do also understand like calling up a government agency like the DOR is probably not, it's not the easiest thing, but is there someone like our auditor or someone who would be the one to flag something like this that we could go to anyone else who's, not a lawyer, who's closer to the DOR, closer to, a neutral source like that, who could weigh in just objectively if we were going to seek more information.
Yeah, we can ask our auditor if that's what the committee wants.
Okay, and there is this larger group called the Community Preservation Act group who has weighed in a couple of times, So what I'm going to propose, and let's see if this works, that we have two financial orders in front of us. That if we take a vote on the financial order that has the cash, where we make it clear that the motion is, we've pulled Jones out, so we're voting on the remaining projects, that we go ahead and vote on that. And then we vote on, unless they're then we vote on the debt service. That way I can draft a report and have a report available for everyone to look at with a section called the Jones Project, that we pulled it out. Does that, and we would come back to this on April 21st. As Lynn said, the other referral we have the regional school debt is the other financial order we have. And otherwise we have what questions we want to start asking using our authority under the charter. And I have drafts of both of those. I just didn't put them in. I forgot to put them on today's agenda, which is a good thing since we don't have time. And we do have minutes. So that would be on the agenda for April 21st, where we're basically coming back to review what I've written and figure out what we want to say about Jones. Does that work for everyone as a way? Okay, so then I'm going to make a motion. I'll start with the easy one. I move that the Finance Committee recommend that the council adopt appropriation and borrowing authorization FY 27-08A, an order appropriating and authorizing debt for the construction of the War Memorial Bathhouse under open space and recreation.
Griesmer seconds.
Is there a second?
Griesmer seconds.
Okay, Lynn seconds. Is there any discussion on this? And the financial order is in this is for $1.5 million. And so we are recommending yes on that. Sam, any discussion on this?
I would love to see the pool project go to its fruition in time. It's a central location. I'm glad that the town and the CPA committee has been persevering in this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Then if there's no other discussion, I will put it to a vote. A yes is a recommendation that the council adopt, and a no is no. And there is also, you could always abstain. There is the third vote. I'll start with, I'm just going to do it as I see it on the screen. I'm going to start with Kathleen.
Support.
Joe?
Yes, support.
Lynn?
Aye.
Sam?
Aye.
Anna?
Aye.
Jill?
Aye.
And Kathy, it's unanimous. Okay, now I will figure out the wording on the next one. I make a motion that the Finance Committee recommend that the council adopt appropriation and borrowing authorization order FY 2707A, an order appropriating FY 2027 Community Preservation Act budget as required under MGL Chapter 44B, and in the table as presented, with the Jones Library removed for a separate vote. And someone can fix that motion because the $330,000 for Jones removed from that collection of projects. So second, I will try to make that into literate wording when I do it, but it is, and everyone has seen that order, so I don't have the ability to change it. So just everyone knows, if Jones isn't in it for now, by the time it gets to the council, Jones will either be in or out, and then the adjustment will be made to the reserves, and the reserves. So is that fairly messily worded motion clear to everyone? All right, then I will put it to a vote. Kathleen?
Support.
Joe?
Yes, support.
Lynn?
Aye.
Sam?
I,
Anna?
Aye.
Jill?
Yes.
Kathy is a yes. So that is unanimous. And then the third motion I'll make is that the town get additional information from DOR and the state regarding whether or not the issue of supplanting needs to be a concern here, and or also approach the Community Preservation Act for their opinion.
And or the auditors, Kathy?
And or the auditors.
Okay.
I'll add the auditors. Is there a second?
Second, Devlin Gothier.
Okay. Sam?
I'm wondering if we want to phrase that motion to simply be a request of whether or not the project qualifies.
Okay, well, I think we need to raise, we're concerned about supplanting. So do you want to raise also whether it's historical reservation? So it's the supplanting issue is the issue, I think, here. So did you want to make it more general? I'm willing to amend that if people want to make it more general. But I think the information we're getting from DOL has to discuss the current financing of the project for them to have a context on which to render opinion, Sam.
I'll go with the committee. I just, to me, it either qualifies or it doesn't. And if
And
the
is
state CPA and or DOR says that it qualifies, that's fine, regardless of supplanting or otherwise.
okay, Anna. So this is
Yeah, just to Sam's point, I think that we should be asking for more information about the definition of supplanting and what they consider supplanting. I'm trying to find it. I believe that the CPA website states that project eligibility is determined by the local municipalities Community Preservation Act committee, not by the state itself. So I think what we're asking for is really the allowable uses, more information on allowable uses and supplanting. They don't render those specific decisions themselves. So I found it on the website. A decision on the allowability of specific projects in each community is determined locally by municipal council. So our KP law would be our municipal council. So that's kind of, I think I'm going to guess that's why the CPA committee was satisfied with the response of KP law, because that, as per the state agency, is what determines the allowability of the project. But if we are not satisfied with that, then I think we should be asking for more about the definition of supplanting. I don't think that they'll consider looking at the specific eligibility.
okay. So you would keep it that a definition of supplanting and them rendering a opinion, going directly on using those words. Yeah. Okay. So the motion was, and Sean is taking notes, that we're going to DOR, the agency that does CPA, to get an opinion on, is this an allowable use based on the question of the definition of supplanting? Yes or no? And to the extent we can get another opinion from the Community Preservation Act Coalition and the auditors, we're looking for basically second and third opinions is if we were going to have surgery on our bodies, but from different sources. Does that cover it in terms of and then I'll look at the tape to make sure I can make this be literate. Anna?
Well, I think a similar question is for folks who were missing this information or who wanted the information directly from the state, would that answer your question? Would that give you what you need one way or another? I think I want to make sure the motion is capturing what the need is from the committee. That's my question for folks, I think it was Sam and Councilor Brevick and maybe Lynn too, had mentioned this as a helpful thing, and I want to make sure that this will actually get at what you feel like you need to.
I feel like this has gotten a bit far away from my initial point. So I don't know. I think my initial point was really more along the lines of not taking the KP law memo as gospel, given that they state really clearly in it the restriction on supplanting, and then give their opinion in what I felt was more vague terms and more of, again, an opinion. And then we received a conflicting opinion from another highly respected law firm that stated the opposite of that. I don't necessarily, and wishing that there was more, that we had more objective information at the outset to avoid all of the upheaval that this caused. So that was my comment.
And I think Anna's question is that if we go to DOR and these other sources, will we get more clarity on this? I mean, we're not going to go to another lawyer on it, and there's probably limited case law. This is a fairly, I would think this is a fairly unusual, that it's not at the start of a project, it's in the middle of the project. Sam?
If we're not seeking another legal opinion to spend, money on things, I'm fine with what we're requesting.
Okay, and so I think that's the way we've left it. We voted on the 2 financial orders without this, and we'll come back on April 21st with whatever information Sean is able to garner for us, and then we will render our recommendations on the Jones project. And abstentions are permitted, but we will also have a record of this discussion. Is that satisfying for people? So if the answer is yes, we can thank Katie, who has sat here very patiently with us the entire time. And thank you, Katie, for being part of a long-winded piece. And we're really not trying to second guess you. It's been a issue long-term on what exactly the situation is. So we'll try to resolve it by the next meeting. So thank you very much. And
thank you. I appreciate it. And I was here to answer any questions because we, as a committee, investigated all of these things as well. And so I appreciate your interest and looking very carefully at making your decision. And I will be here again if you need me. So feel free.
Thank you very much. And you're willing to stay if you want to. The next is just our scheduling. Thanks. So Sean, if you could put up on the screen, because I don't think I sent, people haven't seen it yet.
Did you want to vote on that motion?
On the Jones motion. Thank you, Lynn. So it's been moved and seconded that we ask the staff to, won't try to repeat what I just did, but to gather additional information or confirmation from DOR and CPA committee and potentially order regarding whether this is supplanting or not and an allowable use of the funds. And so we have the motion made and seconded, and I will get a vote on it. Kathleen?
Support.
Joe?
Abstain.
Lynn?
Aye.
Sam?
Aye.
Anna?
Aye.
Jill?
Yes.
And Kathy is a yes. So we have one sustain, 1 abstention, and 5 yeses. And I will get this, I will draft this report probably tomorrow so I can remember what we've just been talking about and listen to the tape. So then Sean has a meeting schedule for the month of May. And if you could put it up on the screen, Sean, and I just want to, there are 2 issues with this that to draw your attention to. we had a request, and I think, Anna, you were the one who raised it, that if the Thursday meetings could be from 3 to 5, we had the potential of getting more counselors who might want to participate in them and or the public. So last time you saw this, the Thursday meetings were from 1 to 3. So this agenda now has 3 to 5 on it for the Thursdays only, otherwise 1 to 3. Jill.
Is there any way we could do 3:30? Would anyone be opposed? It's just 3 o'clock is like the moment that my kids get off the bus. So it's just, I would have to get childcare just for like a very short period of time. I mean, I'm fine with
No, so
general
let me
idea.
just, as far as I'm concerned, yes. So Lynn?
Actually, Jill, that would help me as well. Thank you so much.
That's fine with me. It's better for me.
So Sean, I know you've gone to a lot of work telling people when to show up, but will 3:30, do you think, work for people as well?
Everyone, but I think the schools, when we scheduled that date with the schools, the superintendents, I think, had a conflict at 4:15. So that would be the only one that I would say it might disrupt the kind of the agenda and getting information to the council. I think the other ones we could definitely move back. But
So
I'll do it. We can if we do 3:30, if we do 3:30, it just means the schools, the superintendent will be there for the first 45 minutes.
Okay.
If it's just one, that's fine too. I mean, it's not, yeah, it's only a.
Okay, and so what you're also seeing is everyone has been approached to availability, and then there's one evening meeting, May 11th. The Finance Committee under the charter holds the hearing on the budget. And we, in the past, have always posted this as a joint meeting of council and finance. And we picked the Monday that's not a council date and is before we have to write the final report. So May 11th turned out to be the only Monday that qualified for that we are hearing from the public. So that's the one new item that's brand new. And then Sean has cleared with everyone that they can come for those different days. So the one final thing to point out, and we'll send this out to everyone, is the way we've done the May meetings is each member of the committee, and sometimes two, depending on what the issue were, agrees to, when we receive the town manager's budget, and for things like school and library, those are already available to be seen, comes up with questions that are sent through Sean in advance to whoever will be coming to the meeting. And the rest of us can either also ask questions, in which case we try to do it, send it to the person who's responsible. So the person who's responding only has one set of questions. So when you look at this list, you don't have to answer now, and we'll send this out, what your preference would be for which section of the budget you would like. Yeah, Sean.
I think the only one that would be good sooner rather than later is if you're going to do like if someone's going to be the school person, unless the full committee wants to do the schools. I think that one, because they're coming up soon and we wanted to give them at least a couple weeks to respond to questions. I think it would be good to have someone designated nowish to be the school reviewer.
Okay, so so we can look for a volunteer, and I also have a draft memo based on what we were already talking about that would be asking for the superintendent to appear to answer some questions. And it's mainly focused on the elementary school budget right now. So we had already, so is there someone who would definitely like to do schools? Because this would be an addition. Lynn. And you're saying you would like to do schools? And you're muted.
I'm willing to do schools, Kathy. We'll start with your questions, but I also want to point out that the budgets that we have before us are the ones that they have submitted to the town manager. Right. They are not the budget that the town manager has given us.
That's right. Sam?
But I will be glad to do schools.
Okay.
Sorry, Lynn, can you say that again?
So that when we get what she said is when we get the town budget, the town manager's budget will have put a dollar amount in for each of the major categories: municipal, regional, and elementary. So what we'll be looking at is the budget as voted by the schools, as well as what is in the town manager's budget in terms of questions. The town manager won't have made line item decisions on it. It'll be just a top line dollar number. Okay, so she's just saying, that there potentially will be two totals. With regional, I don't imagine there'll be an issue because regional is exactly within guidelines and is with what was already penciled into the budget, but the other could vary.
So just saying we'll be getting two in those cases. Yeah. Okay, got it.
And everyone's seen the budget book. When it comes to the schools, there's no detail in the budget of the schools. There's just a total number. The detail for the schools is in the school budget. Sam?
Do I understand you correctly that you're indicating that a member of the finance committee for each of the presenters will be asking questions here? I see you referenced.
Let me try to explain it. When you see the budget, so let's take its general government and debt or public safety. You see what's in the write-up. You ask in writing questions that Sean sends in advance. So we are not asking them during the meeting. So rather than hitting people with questions for the first time when they come, they already know, so it could be things like, you said you're facing with high turnover. Can you describe to me what the problem is? So it could be that kind of question. You are not the person asking the questions during the meeting. They will already respond it. And usually we focus right away, and Sean has got his hand up again. We focus right away, brief overview, and then answer to the questions to be efficient with the use of everybody's time.
And the subject areas to submit questions in advance to are the departments that are referenced in the third column of this. So they would be general government debt, public safety, library, and whatnot.
You've got it. And Sean's hand is up, and I'm just saying that in a couple, so last year, 2 people wanted to do DPW because it's DPW and the enterprise funds. So it's a big topic on it. And so you don't need to volunteer now. We'll send this list out. And if there's overlaps, I'll let people know, give me your top choice and your second choice. And Sean, your hand is up.
Yeah, I just adding what Kathy said. It doesn't mean you can't ask other questions. It's just to the extent you know questions you want to ask, or it's really once the budget is turned over, instead of you having to go through all the departments and kind of get in the weeds of all the departments, you'll focus on the one that you're assigned. So if you're public safety, that's the one that you would do a deep dive in your review and then see what questions you have. And then you'll send them all to me and I will keep a master list of all the questions and I will work with the department heads to make sure they're answered at the meeting.
And so one thing, and Lynn, I see your hand is up. One other thing is when you volunteer for it, you're also going to volunteer to write the section in the finance committee report on the area. And I'll send everyone a copy of last year's finance committee report. So we do a write-up for each of these major sections that focuses on what additional information we got that you wouldn't have already gotten in the budget book. So there was a lot of information on a few of these that was expansive. So, so it's 2 things, both. And then the last thing is that you're not the only one. So we have at least one counselor who's currently the president of the council who has sent in questions on literally every topic. So she just, again, sends them through Sean and he consolidates. So some people just can't wait to look at the budget book and think through what their questions might be, in terms of their focus questions. Lynn?
Yes, Kathy, that was one of the things I wanted to make sure is people understood that when you volunteer, you not only volunteer for gathering the questions, but you also volunteer for writing that section. The other thing I wanted to ask the chair, though, are you going to make each of the meetings committees of the whole?
We will, I'll need guidance from that. I think we have always posted them on as meetings of the whole, and then if not enough counselors showed up, they become just a finance committee meeting, which is, various of them. We picked the Thursday meetings with the thought that there are counselors who aren't on finance committee who might want to be in the meeting for those discussions. So those are school, public safety, and DPW and enterprise funds. So those are the 3 Thursdays. And we deliberately looked at them for Thursdays. So the overlap with the Community Resource Committee wouldn't mean that no one from that committee could come if they wanted to. So in the past, Lynn, this, it's varied a lot on whether people just sent us the questions rather than actually attended. We are a committee of the whole of 7 come, so we start with 5. So that's the issue.
7 counselors.
7 counselors, right. So I will try to figure out, you're the one who knows how we posted them in the past, whether we started out as committee of the whole finance committee and then just said this one ended up just being finance committee. I don't really remember. Yeah. Sam.
Thank you for explaining and answering. I'll have to check my schedule on, May. I may have a few things going. I'd be glad to do government debt and libraries, either one.
Okay.
Just putting that out there.
So look at the clusters.
Okay.
Library is available as a budget. It's been submitted to us. I looked the other day, Sean, it's not posted yet. It's actually not posted at the Jones site, but I looked at the Zoom recording and found it. But library has presented a budget, and so the task is before we meet again, people send me their requests so that when we meet on April 21st, we have a pretty good idea of who's doing what. Sean?
Oh, sorry, you can finish. I was just going to say the
I did
regional,
finish.
the regional school budget and the library budget are both posted on the town website. If you go to the budget tab,
Okay, they're up
it-
now. Okay.
yeah, it defaults to the FY27 budget now. And the only one I got to put the elementary school budget on there. That's not up there yet. But the library and region budget are there.
And just to be very clear, so Kathleen or Joe or anyone, if there's a topic you don't want to be the lead, but you have questions when you see it, the idea is you send them into Sean, and except for that first week, he does a really good job of consolidating, so people aren't looking like 4 lists. He just says 3 people ask the same question, and he does a pretty good job. And we often get written responses, which makes it very useful for writing this up. I think you saw this, Kathleen was watching JCPC, but we got early on questions, then we had some answers posted in the packets along the way. So that is where we're going through the month of May. And I want to thank everyone today. It is 3:12, so we've gone longer than our 2 hours, but I thought it was a good discussion, even though I know it was a difficult discussion to have, an unusual discussion, maybe I'll call it that. So I make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I will put it to a vote. Kathleen?
Or
Kathy is a yes. Joe?
Yes.
Lynn?
Yeah, aye.
Sam?
Aye.
Anna?
Aye.
Jill?
Yes.
And Kathy is a yes. We are adjourned, and I will see you all in 2 weeks.